Welcome to Computer Pile. Whether it's your latest tech, pet gear, or gaming must-haves, or more, we have you covered with honest reviews that you can trust. And if you want to find the best products, follow us now. All right. Hello there, Amazon. Welcome to another Author Spotlight by Computer Pile. We're so excited to have with us today Ricky Price with his book, Celebrate Your Wins. So I hope you join us, invite a friend, and as we jump into this interview, I'm going to bring him online here. There he is, Ricky Price. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you, my friend?
Doing good. I just want to thank you for doing this interview. I saw you on LinkedIn, and I was so inspired by your book and started researching. And I man, I got to contact him. I tell you. So thank you for coming up here today. I see some more people jumping in on social media. Tanya there. Thank you for joining us. So we're going to get right to it. Maybe a lot of people don't know who Ricky Price is. So how about you introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are?
Okay. Welcome, people. I'm very honored to be on your show. Obviously, this is the first for me doing something on Amazon. My book is on the platform Amazon and Audible, and so it just kind of made sense for me. My name is Ricky Price, born and raised in Los Angeles, California. After a good high school career, I was able to get offered a scholarship to play at Duke University, where I was a 1,000-point scorer, all ACC selection. And after that, I was able to have a fortunate 9-year professional career in the NBA and overseas. And now speaking, professional development, corporate team building, and an author of Celebrate Your Wins. So I'm excited to enter these next chapters of life.
All right. Yeah, I saw your book on Amazon. A lot of people don't know that Amazon have this Amazon Live platform. It is just amazing that you can come up here and interact with customers as they're shopping. And you know, I've been doing it for about 4 years, and man, we are having a great time. And a lot of the authors that come through here after we do their interview, you know, they see increased book sales. So I hope that happens for you as well. You know, so I'm going to go and get right into the questions. I guess I hesitated because I hate to say I'm a Tar Heel fan. I know you're a Duke fan. I'm a big Tar Heel fan. So, but man, this is great. One of the questions I had from you is, you know, you said you was born in California. How was the shift coming from California to the East Coast? I know that's got to be a change.
Oh, it was huge. You know, obviously, everything's different. California has palm trees. You know, here there's pine needle trees. Everything is so green. There, it's more scenic with the water, and then you got the mountains. And so it was a whole different look, feel, vibe. The biggest thing, the biggest issue that I had was probably the language barrier. When I got to North Carolina, it took me about 3 or 4 months to understand what people were saying. You know, like, right there, everybody, everywhere. I'm like, you mean everybody? You mean everywhere? And so it was different for me. But once I had my first sweet tea from Bojangles, I was hooked.
Oh man, that is so funny. I mean, my talking is so country. I tell you, I don't know how nobody can understand me, but you're right. There's got to be a language barrier. I did have the privilege and opportunity to go to California for a week for business. And I mean, I don't know how these people work out here. I couldn't work out here. I got to go back to my place,
Yeah.
because it is beautiful out there.
Yeah, the scenery is unbelievable. I tell people all the time, if I win the lottery, I'm definitely going back to Los Angeles. It's just so expensive there.
Yeah.
LA is home. I got family and friends there. I try to visit, at least 2 times a year. But,
Mhm.
I love getting back home and seeing my people.
Amen. All right. Well, I wanted to ask you a question about your book. I mean, I have really enjoyed reading it so far. I did not finish, but I just really the way you wrote it, that is really in common man language that you can really understand. I read some books; they're so complicated. I mean, yours, I really flowed with it and connected to you. But one of the things that I like in your book is, I always ask all authors, what inspired you to write the book?
Well, I think Celebrate Your Wins was my COVID project. I think
Hmm.
during COVID, we all had a lot of free time, twiddling our thumbs, not doing anything. Um, and so people have always told me that I should write a book. For me, I'm such a great storyteller. I've had so many great experiences through the game of basketball that, there were so many experiences that I could share. And,
Hmm.
obviously, add some nuggets to some pitfalls and some of the things that I did to be successful that can maybe help other people. And so I think that's really the origin of why. And I had a co-writer, Elise K. Williams, and we just, did interviews just like this
Hmm.
over about a 3 or 4 week period, and then put it together. And we started to write. She was the main writer, writing through my thoughts and my vision. And she did a masterful job of telling my story. So Celebrate Your Wins is pretty much a memoir about my career as a basketball player and some of those same strategies I used to be, good in business and good at basketball that kind of carried me over into life, and so many life lessons learned. And I think, the whole concept can help, the next generation of basketball players and the next generation of people in corporate America. And the reaction has been good. Sales have been pretty good, and people are liking, what they see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you guys, it is a great read, and I can't wait to finish it. You said it was your COVID project. Now, let me ask you a question. Would you have wrote it if COVID wouldn't have happened? I know when in reading your book, you said there was, I think, a friend called Chris, and you guys had to come into Jesus moment. So I know a lot of times people say, "Hey, I would have done it, but I had that little nudge." I mean, talk about that.
Yeah, so I probably would have written it, but the timing is everything, and I think
Hmm.
COVID kind of pushed me in that direction. As a basketball trainer, the world kind of stopped for me, just like it did for a lot of people. There was no
Hmm.
training, there was no basketball, there was no nothing. Basketball is very much a community type event where you got to touch people, you got to be around people. It's teams, it's different stuff like that. And so because of COVID, you couldn't be around individuals. And so
Hmm.
I just wanted to be constructive and write my story, tell my story, at least plot the story during those times. And it took 4 whole years to write and then finally get out. But once the finished product was done, I was happy with it. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it the same way.
All right. One of the things I noticed when I was about to purchase your book, I saw that it's an audio format now. And I was really excited because they got some deal right now where I can get it for 99 cents for 3 months. Like, wow, this is
Really?
yeah, yeah. It's like, so guys, if you're on Amazon and you haven't done audio books, now is the time. Amazon has a 99 cent um, a deal to introduce, and then it switches back to the regular price. But it's a great time to test it out. Now, let me ask you a question about audiobook. Now, I mean, I don't know. You might not even know how it works. How does that work? Do you read it or somebody else read it? Does Amazon do it or do you orchestrate it? I'm just wondering.
That's a great question. And I didn't know any of these answers to any of these questions as well when I got started with the audiobook, but I just felt like, it'd just be another channel, another vehicle,
Hmm.
another way to tell my story. And to me, the audiobook is probably the most gratifying part of this whole project because I was the one narrating the book.
Oh, right.
And so a good friend of mine, Aaron Atkinson, produced it. and he's an incredible visionary. He's produced short stories before and short films before. And I told him that I wanted something different, meaning that, I didn't want it to be the run of the mill, same type of boring presentation that puts you to sleep when you're listening to it.
Yes.
My audiobook has music in the background.
Oh, man.
It has themes. It has the sounds of basketball, the sounds of life. It's full of it's like a movie that you can listen to. It's really dope. And for me, that was one of the most gratifying parts of the whole project. And the reception for that has been incredible. And I haven't heard many audiobooks that sound like mine. And so hopefully, I create a lane that's a little bit different than other people.
Well, you're going to get another purchase. Now I got to go purchase the audiobook. The 99-cent caught me, but the way you just explained that. So we got quite a few people on Facebook as well, guys. Make sure you get the audiobook and the printed copy. It is a great read. Now, I love, like I said, I love the way you told the story about how your mom and dad met going to UCLA. That was just really, I was just so enamored by that. And you just drew me in the way you presented that. But then, shortly after that, you talked about, they had got married, and then 3 years later, they, got divorced. You kind of talked about, real world situations that happen. So would you want to, as a kid, how did you handle that?
Yeah, obviously the divorce rate in America is pretty high these days. I don't know, 55, 60% last time I checked. And so, a lot of marriages don't end up, they don't finish the deal in terms of staying together.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was definitely subject to that as a kid. I'm the only child. And so it was tough. Obviously, you want to have both parents in the household, and you want to be in a situation where they're both there. My dad was very much a part of my life, even though I live with my mom pretty much, full time. I saw my dad on the weekends, and then obviously he was very instrumental in my basketball activities, coaching me, going to games, taking me to practice and stuff like that. And it's being a dad. And so I was grateful to have them both, even though they weren't together.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, so it kind of reminded me of what you said, how your dad coached you throughout your, younger years basketball. That's kind of exactly what I did with my kids, coaching them in basketball. So I guess the question is, why Duke? Your parents met at UCLA. What were their thoughts about you going to Duke? I just wonder.
That's another great question. You tend to ask good questions. Mm-hmm. And, coming from a Carolina guy, should it have been Carolina?
Yeah, it should have been. Yeah.
No, I'm just giving you a hard time. For me, both my parents went to UCLA. They graduated from there. I'm from Los Angeles. So, ideology would say I would stay,
mm-hmm.
in the area and go to UCLA. And it was funny because the decision to go to Duke, we played UCLA my freshman year.
Mm.
We actually played them at UCLA, and they beat us by 25, beat the brakes off of us. And then they go on to win a national championship. And so I was thinking to myself, did I make the right decision?
Yeah.
Should I have gone to UCLA? A lot of my teammates and friends that I played with in AAU went to UCLA, and I knew the whole team. It's like that whole team was from the Southern California area. But I was a different breed. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to get away from home. Mm-hmm. I wanted to, travel and see what else was out there. At the time, the ACC was the best conference in America. Mm-hmm. I wanted to challenge myself to play in that conference. At the time, Coach K was the best coach in America, just coming off of 2 national championships. I wanted to challenge myself and play for a great coach. And then academically, Duke was a, top 5, top 10 school academically. And I knew that, a degree from Duke, could take me a long way. And so, I don't regret the decision. Duke was probably, some of the best 4 years, probably the best 4 years in my life. Yeah. And so, for me, it was a pretty sound and good decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you. And that's just really, you coast to coast. That, like I say, that is really nice. And that shows you your confidence. I had one question, growing up as a competitor, what was your first win in your life that shaped your confidence on or off the court?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think making my middle school basketball team, I went to Gardena Valley Christian, which was a basketball powerhouse. I
Mm,
think before I'd gotten to Gardena, they were like 50-0. I mean, they had lost no league games. They had great players left and right. Guys from our school were going to AAU programs, going to high school programs, and doing big things. And you don't see that from a middle school type situation.
mhm,
Our school was that good. And at Gardena, you could make the team as a sixth grader.
mm.
So obviously there were sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. And, I tried out for the team as a sixth grader and I made the team. And I didn't play that much, but just the honor of being in the
Yes.
midst of so many great basketball players and
Yeah.
challenging myself to play against the best, even though I was one of the younger guys on the team, was incredible. And then as a seventh and eighth grader, I was able to take it to the next level. But that sixth grade make of the middle school basketball team really took my confidence to a different level.
Oh man, that's really good. I mean, when you were saying that, you said you didn't play much. I played, believe it or not, I was on the team in the conference with Alonzo Mourning. I was on the bench. I didn't play hardly at all. But like you said, I was just loved being on the team with these guys, man. I remember the time that we played them and he broke our glass. He was known
Mm.
for breaking glasses. But of course, I was on the bench. I don't think I even touched the court that night. But it still gave you confidence that, hey, you made the team, you accomplished something. And like I say, that's good that you saw that in middle school. So guys, it starts young. It starts young. So I guess my next question here is, how was your time at Duke? How did that challenge your success beyond the court?
Duke was an incredible experience. To me, playing at Duke was almost like an extension of the pros.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Yeah.
level was just so high. First of all, you're playing in the ACC, which at the time was the best conference in America. And so every game was against, five-star talent and guys who
Mm.
were, traditionally getting drafted into the NBA. Um, and then, obviously just my teammates, I entered a team that already had 8 McDonald's All-Americans on it.
Mm.
So me being the best player from California, well, Wojo and Trajan who were my classmates, coming in '94. Wojo was the best player in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And Trajan Langdon was the best player out of Alaska. Jeff Cape was on the team. He was the best player out of North Carolina when he comes
Mm.
out. Chris Collins is on the team. He was the best player, out of Illinois when he comes out. And so there's so many great players. Greg Newton is our center, and he's the best player from Canada.
Yeah.
And the talent was just so high that you had to bring it each and every day. And playing at Duke really started to really build my competitive spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It started me to understand that I had to compete each and every day if I wanted, playing time, if I wanted to be good,
Yeah.
and if I wanted to be great, I had to be willing to compete. And,
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate the way the coach, conducted practice, putting competitive spirit and competitive nature in the forefront. He wanted to see who was going to get after it, and those
Mm-hmm.
the guys he wanted to play. And it kind of drilled those lessons into me.
Yeah, I think even in your book you mentioned the Kobe moment. We know how hard Kobe worked and put the work in. And I think that for young kids and young sports, I see a lot of kids that are really excellent in high school, but when they go to that next level, like you said, where the talent is just as good, if not better, that leads me to my next question. What was the moment in your playing career when you realized talent alone wasn't enough?
Probably at McDonald's All-American practice.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to be a McDonald's All-American, which is traditionally, the top 20 or 25 players in the nation. And then they come together for an all-star game, usually in the spring. They call it the McDonald's All-American game. And it's, the collection of the best players in the country in high school that year. And so I remember, before the game, we're there for a whole week.
Mm-hmm.
The game was on a Saturday, but we get there like a Monday or Tuesday, and we have practice leading up to the game.
Mm-hmm.
different events. So we had practice. We go to the Ronald McDonald House. I think they took us to a NBA game, the Knicks NBA game. The game was held in New York, so we watched the Knicks play, and it's all these different other activities for us to do. But practice that week was an eye opener because, in high school I was able to dominate with
Yeah.
talent and athleticism, but you had to bring so much more than that in those everyday practices because these guys were just as good, if not better than you. And it helped me realize that, this game is real. And if I want to be the very, very best, I'm going to have to, take my game to even a higher level. And I appreciated that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way you responded there because, as I used to coach, and I tell it happens in practice. And it's just like even in our life, even in our Christian life, we do all our studying, reading the Bible and all this stuff, and we think we're never going to have to use it. It's that time of studying and practicing that's getting us ready for the opportunity that's coming ahead. And that kind of leads me to my next question. How do you personally define a win today compared to when you were an athlete?
Yeah, one of the reasons why I chose the title Celebrate Your Wins is because, we focus so much on what we didn't do, what we didn't accomplish, what we failed at. And so sometimes people focus too much on what they didn't do, and we don't focus on the little wins that we have each and every day.
Yes.
And that could be as easy as everyone in January is always on this health kick.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's in the gym. They want to lose weight. They
Yeah.
live a healthier lifestyle. And so little wins like completing a full week of going to the gym. That may not be a lot for a lot of people, but if you haven't done that your whole life and you complete 7 days of going to the gym, that's a win.
That's it.
That's a win. It could be as for someone in school, who struggles in math and, all of a sudden, they have a big test and they're able, to get an A on that test. And they've been getting, C's and B's, traditionally, the whole time, but they get an A on this particular test. That's a win. We should celebrate.
That's right.
And so just the little wins sometimes can build confidence. And, I think the ideology of celebrating your wins should happen each and every day.
Man, that was well said. Like I said, this is what, like in your book, you talk about celebrating the process, just not the outcomes. And like you say, every, journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So, I mean, and that was really encouraging because sometimes hey, I haven't done this. I haven't done, hey, but I did do this. So that really, I just love the title, Celebrating Your Wins, because it's hard to celebrate your wins sometimes. You're happy for others, but you're struggling and you're still trying to get through things as well. So let me talk about this one here. Athletes are trained to move quickly from losses. How do you balance that with actually learning from them? Yeah, real quick, I'll say this because I coached basketball. I wasn't really good. My team lost a lot, but I always told them they never lost if you learn. So how does that translate to life?
Yeah, basketball is a competitive sport. Unfortunately, you're not going to win every game.
Yes.
It's impossible. You're going to take your losses team wise, you're going to lose as a team. And then individually, there could be losses as well where maybe you don't play as well as you like to. And so, it's important to dust yourself off. One of the pillars that I talk about is mental toughness and perseverance. And that's, basically what we're talking about is, being able to weather the storm, when things are not particularly going your way. And the game of basketball can deal you some really, really tough blows, even in the form of injury. As a basketball player, I've experienced, a lot of injury. I broke my leg, I tore my Achilles, I broke my collarbone, I broke my hand, including 2 fingers, but nothing was going to stop me from playing the game that I loved. I would just rehab and come back stronger. And so, the thought process of being mentally tough and being able to persevere is a really, really big and strong quality of being a good basketball player. But not only that, I think it's a strong quality of being, a good, solid individual in life. Things are not going to always go your way. You have to take losses. shrug them off, figure out what you did wrong, and then keep moving and then make the adjustment, to do better the next time. And that's the epitome of perseverance and mental toughness.
That's it right there. And you mentioned your five pillars. Is it okay for me to share those?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Because if you didn't, I was.
Well, how about you share them? I'll let you just go ahead and give us the five pillars.
Well, the Game Ready Pillars to Success is really just a blueprint for me. How I was able to live. It's my why and it's my how. How was I able to do these things? Well, these five pillars were the instruments for me to do so. The first one is being able to visualize and imagine. Obviously, there's so many great things that happen in my life. It's funny because a lot of those things that happened for me, I visualized and imagined them happening first. And I actually saw them, happening first. I remember being a kid, in my room, balling up a piece of paper or some tissue, and 3, 2, 1, and shooting it into the wastebasket or shooting into the hamper or whatever. And then if I missed, he got fouled, so you shoot it again until you make it. Fast forward, and then you're able to, in college, I was able to hit, a couple game-winning shots. And, when those moments happen, I'm thinking to myself, I've been here before. That's because I visualized and imagined those moments, when I was a kid. Pillar number 2 is competitive spirit. We talked about that before, being willing and able to compete for any and everything. Nothing is going to be given to you. Some people are as talented or more talented than you. So you have to figure out ways how to outlast your opponent. You have to be willing to compete. We talked about perseverance and mental toughness, pillar number 3.
That's right.
When things, go wrong, are you able to pick yourself up and keep going? I think that's an incredible quality for any individual to have. And then, we talked about pillar number 4 is hard work. Hard work. Obviously, nothing is easy. You have to work hard for it. You can talk to any millionaire, any billionaire, any CEO, any business owner, any coach, any player, and they all say the same thing. The time and effort, the level of time that they spent working on their craft, it's immeasurable. They spent so much time working on their craft, and you can't be afraid to put on your hard hat and go to work.
That's
and
right.
then lastly, the last pillar is confidence. Who is going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself? You have to be confident in your abilities. You have to be confident in your teammates' abilities. You have to be confident in your ideas. You have to be confident that, if implemented correctly, your ideas will work. And, confidence is huge. With those 5 pillars, that kind of shaped who I am, and it gave me great success on the basketball court and beyond. And, for me, it's something that I can share.
Oh, man, those are some great pillars to stand by. One question I had for you, can you share a time when you didn't feel like you were winning at all, but later realized it was a pivotal moment?
Yeah, there's so many moments. I talk to people about this all the time. I mean, basketball is a marathon, not a sprint. There are times when, you question, your game, you question yourself, shots are not falling. I'm working hard, but I don't see it. I don't see the results. You got to stick with it. You got to stick with it. And there were plenty of moments as a basketball player where I felt that way. Growing up in Southern California, there were so many great players, and I was always vying to be the very, very best, but I wasn't always the very best. My senior year, I ended up being the best player in California, but I started, a lot lower than that. 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I wasn't the best player in my class. 9th, 10th grade, I started to get a little bit better. And then as an 11th and 12th grader, I was able to overcome and become, the very, very best in California. Same thing nationally. I remember looking at rankings going into my senior year, and I was a top 35 player in the country, which is good. I mean, that's not bad. That's actually pretty good. But I wanted more. I wanted to be the very, very, very best.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember we had this big camp. It was called ABCD camp, and all the coaches and all the publications and all the people who rank people, were there. And basically, if you played well in this camp, your ranking would either go up or go down.
Mm-hmm.
Playing in that basketball camp, I was one of the best players in that camp, and I started the year ranked 35th, and I ended the year mainly because of that camp, ranked fourth. And so,
Wow.
which meant I was a top 5 player in the country.
Wow.
And so, I started here and I ended here. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is the maturation, and this is the transition of what you have to go through. And it was a patient, 4-year experience. And, I had to do it in order to get to where I got.
Yeah, and I love what you said there, patience, because a lot of people today think, boom, it just happens like that. You got to do the whole hard work. You got to check in. You got to wait, and that's really where the best come out. The best to know that it's going to take more than the other. I always teach my kid. I got 3 boys, and I'm telling them, if you're not better than the other, you got to be 2 or 3 times better than the other person. I'll just be honest. Being our race, always put in me that I got to do way better than the other to keep pushing and putting that time in there.
Absolutely.
So one question here: what lessons from a high-level sport translate directly into leadership, business, or everyday life? Because I know a lot of people use. I was in sports a lot too. I mean, I can just talk, and I always use those to relate to life. How do you do that?
Really, it's all of them. All of
Yeah.
them. It starts with the visualize and imagine. It starts with visualizing. I just wrote a post on my Substack about this, about visualizing. And, that's where it starts. And to me, that's one of the most important things you can do is you got to see yourself in these positions. You got to see yourself doing great things. You got to see yourself, getting that raise, getting that promotion. You got to see yourself, leading the meeting. You got to see yourself becoming the CEO, of the company. And if you don't do that, I just can't see how it's going to happen. And then once that happens, if we talked about this, you got to have the work. You got to be able, put the work in. You got to do things when people, aren't particularly watching.
That's it.
And then, I guarantee you along the way, there's going to be some pitfalls. You're going to fall short. You're not going to be able to, achieve some of your goals. So you think, or, a call or a conversation or a situation just didn't go your way.
Yeah.
And, you're going to have to persevere and be mentally tough to fight through and right the ship. And then obviously, we talked about, confidence. You got to be confident in yourself to pull yourself out of these situations and know that you can do it. And so it's not just one, it's really all of them. It's really all of those pillars, that translate. And, one of the things that's great about being in sports and, people who hire CEOs of companies, they always say this, they love to hire people who played sports because they have a built-in competitive spirit. They're mentally tough. They do some of the things that we're talking about. And because a lot of those skills that you have to go through as an athlete are translatable, in life and in business.
Yeah, definitely. And understand teamwork. Businesses love teamwork. It's not just a one-man show here. Many athletes don't make that transition well. It looks like you have, with your foundation. So for athletes transitioning out of sports, what mind shifts are most critical for them?
Well, yeah, that's really, I talk about that a lot in the speeches that I have, is life after basketball. And, listen, I had some dark times. It was very, very difficult at times, for me to figure out what was next after basketball. When you grow up and your dad puts a ball in your hand at 5 and you've been playing all your life, and then you make the decision to stop playing, what's next? And so I was lost for several years figuring out what I wanted to do. But for me, the answer was always there. It was always under my nose. I'd always had an affinity for teaching. I always had an affinity for working with kids and young people. And, so, being a basketball trainer and teaching kids, how to be better basketball players was a natural progression for me. The best thing to do is to develop some passions while you're still playing. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of NBA players are doing that now with their own podcasts, going
Mm-hmm.
on TV and guest appearing on shows, talking basketball, and start to develop habits and passions and hobbies that you like that potentially could be monetized. And so now when you're finished playing basketball, you can just transition easily into some of those things.
Yeah, that's true. Now talk about your camps that you do around here in this area. Because I'm kind of interested in that, so I can't wait to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, so actually, I'm going to announce camp probably in a couple weeks. Game Ready Skills and Development Summer Basketball Camp. It's my baby. I've been doing it for
Mm-hmm.
now close to 15 years, and basically, as a kid growing up, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to go to a basketball camp.
Mm-hmm.
Financial constraints, parenting. It could be anything. And to me, it's ridiculous. Every kid should have a chance to go to a really good basketball camp. And so, we've transitioned, and we're going to try to transition fully into having a free basketball camp.
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate enough, to have good sponsors and people who back me
Oh,
and
that's good.
enjoy my vision. Think that what I do is needed,
Mm-hmm.
will support the cause. And because of that, I've been able to scholarship more and more players each and every year. But
Oh,
we're getting to the point now where hopefully this year, we'll be able to have, pretty much a sponsored camp, for the first 150 kids who register. And we're
wow.
still, doing the kinks on that. But, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important that kids have the opportunity to do that. We're talking about a week of skills and drills, stations, basketball games, 5-on-5 games, 3-on-3 games, prizes, giveaways, guest speakers,
Oh man.
all the great things you need, to enjoy a good week of basketball camp.
Oh man, I'm interested in this because obviously I told you I had three boys and I sent two of them to camp and it was expensive. And I mean, how could people donate to that? Because I would love to donate that. I have a business as well. I would love to make. How would people donate to that cause?
Yeah, well, right now we're in the midst of solidifying dates for June,
Okay.
and so when that information comes out, we'll get it to people and let them know. We do have a sponsorship proposal package. If you go to GameReadyCOT.com, last year's camp is up and running. The sponsorship package is up and running, but those dates won't reflect what this year's camp will be. Again, we'll announce that in a couple weeks, but you'll get the main frame of what you'll see and what you'll get and how you can donate from what's already there. Again, that's Game Ready COT is the website, and if you tab over to summer camp, you see all the information that where you can donate, sponsor, and be a part of the movement.
Oh man, that's good. I'm definitely gonna look into that. Well, I only have three more questions here. I'm not gonna hold you up here.
That's it. Only three more. I was having so much fun.
Well, there's some questions coming in on Amazon. I don't know if you can see the comments here, guys. I'm gonna get to your question. I got three more, and I promise I'm gonna open it up to you here. But I really want to hear these questions here. Real quick here, what role does gratitude play in sustaining long-term success and happiness?
That's a great question. Listen, being humble is definitely a part of this whole deal. Like I said, my mom uh, pretty much raised me. I spent most of my time with her, and the gratitude that I have really comes from um, seeing how she raised me, how she never missed a game, how she never missed a practice, how she always wanted to be the team mom, how she was instrumental in everything academics, making sure that I had good grades and that I was doing what I was supposed to do in the classroom, making sure that I was a good human being, that I was staying out of trouble, that I was respectful, and all the things that she did to raise me. The gratitude there. You don't see it when it's happening because, mom, why you on me? Mom, why? But later on in life, when you start to accomplish, your dreams and aspirations, you realize, who got you there. And when I think about gratitude, she's the first person that I think about. about how much she was there for me. And each and every time I see her, I tell her how grateful I am to have her, and and how grateful I am that she spent the time and she invested in me, to pretty much make me who I am. And so that's just my mom and my situation. But for every human being out there who's trying to play basketball and trying to get to the next level, there's somebody who was pouring and investing into them. And so, that same individual should be very grateful that you have, those people. And if you have several people, doing that, then your chances increase even more.
Yeah, man, that's good advice there. All right, one more question, and then I'll open it up to others. If a young athlete or professional is listening and feels stuck or overlooked, what's one win they should start celebrating today?
When things get a little out of control for me, I always like to fall back on the fundamentals and keep things simple. We all want to try to get things, but we want to try to get them in chunks.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of, compare it to like being in a hole in a basketball game. You're down 15. You can't get it back all at once. Kind of got to chip away.
Yeah.
Got to chip away at it. And, as time goes down, maybe at the 5-minute mark, you want to be down 7.
Mm-hmm.
So you've chipped into a little bit. And so now at the 2-minute mark, I want to be down 2 and then, have a chance to win the game. And so, you can't do it in chunks. You got to kind of do it piece by piece.
Mm-hmm.
You got to simplify sometimes, your situation. And sometimes, people, they try to make things too difficult. And it's the simplified way is always better. Keep it simple, stick to your guns, stick to your fundamentals, and chip away at it. That would be my advice.
That's real good. We got one easy question here. I think this is quite easy. From Icy on Amazon. He says, "Do you train adults too, or just youth?"
Yeah, I've trained adults before. There's a lot of guys who play in these men's leagues here, and they want to be competitive. And I've trained men before that, so they make sure that they're good and they can compete in their men's leagues and not embarrass themselves. But honestly, like I said before, in terms of training, I've kind of gotten away from that a little bit because of the book. People are asking me to speak, and I was already speaking before. I do some consulting with Duke Corporate Education, and so I do corporate team building events, motivational speaking, and professional development. That's kind of the lane, that I've kind of been in, for the last 6 months. And now that we are here in 2026, I think I'm going to be doing that pretty much full time moving forward. And so, we'll still do our camps and clinics, camps specifically, but, the training, not so much.
Okay, good question on that, Icy. I know Icy always do a lot of stuff with basketball, so I know he was interested. All right, guys, any more questions? I got one last one I'm going to save here for the end, but any more questions? I wanted to put your book cover up here. Let me see if I can do this. Let's see. There's the book cover right there. There we go. There it is right there. That is nice. Celebrate your win. You look awfully happy taking that picture. You remember taking that picture?
I do remember taking it. There's basketball has always been a love for me. Talking about the game, watching the game, reading about the game. I have a passion, for the game, and obviously I have a great story to tell. And so, and I got a pretty good smile, so I try to use it, every once in a while. But no, I really appreciate, the opportunity to write a book, and I hope that people, buy the book and they get something from it. There are a lot of nuggets in here, a lot of good nuggets in here.
It really is, guys. I tell you, I can't wait to get the audio. You done sold me on the audio now. So I'm going to give you my final question here. Let me see if I can get this screen back here. My final question is, when it's all said and done, somebody else just popped a new question here. Man, I was about to ask my last question. Here we go.
You can ask two. You can ask two. I got a little bit of time.
Okay, let me go with these. They got 2 ones that just popped in here. It says, what era of NBA hoops do you think was or is the best? I knew that was going to come.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And I get that a lot. I don't recognize parts of the game today.
Mhm.
Obviously I grew up playing in the 80s and 90s. And so, that style of basketball is what I'm
Mm.
familiar with and what I appreciate the most. Early 2000s gave you some of that too, but now the game is in some ways becoming unrecognizable.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking about like really the 3-point shot,
Mhm.
has kind of taken the forefront, especially on offense.
Yeah.
And it's tough to watch because not everybody shoots the three well. And I kind of
Mhm.
think that the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant kind of ruined basketball,
Mhm.
because they were such great shooters and they won with that style of play. Everybody now thinks that that's the way to win
Yeah.
games and take 40, 50, 60 threes and shoot a low percentage, but you're hoping that the threes outweigh the other team's twos. It's just ridiculous. Load management to me is hard to imagine as well.
Yes.
Why players don't play in all 82 games. Obviously, if you're hurt or injured, obviously you can't play. But
Mhm.
saving yourself for the playoffs, is crazy. They didn't do that back in the day. And then it's like the players want to make more money, but they want to play less.
Mhm.
And then I think the thin skin
Yeah.
also is an issue. A lot of today's players are not open to criticism.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, you know, when you win, people are going to celebrate you and tell you how great you are.
Mhm.
When you lose, people are going to point the finger and they're going to have things to say about that as well. Sometimes today's athlete, struggles with that, and nobody wants to be ridiculed or talked about. But this is the nature of the game, and so those three things, specifically stand out for me. I still love the game. I'll still watch it. I think playoff NBA basketball is the best
Yeah.
for me, and then college basketball is also has its own issues and problems that we can probably get into in a whole nother segment. But the game is ever evolving, and you just gotta, you kind of gotta go with it a little bit.
Man, you really, I mean, those are the things that I see as a big problem as well. I know when I played, the three shot wasn't that big. It was inside, pound the ball, pound the ball. It's so much different now. But I did have a follow up question. Man, this one sparked a question. I wanted to get your takes on it. My son tells me now that college players are getting paid. Is that true? I mean, I don't understand how that happens.
Yeah, there's a thing called NIL now, and so you can get paid off your name, image, and likeness, and
Wow.
it's a big business now. And the first thing I have to say is, where was this in the mid '90s? And why couldn't I profit, off of some of that stuff? But like I said, times have changed, and sometimes not for the good. NIL is great. I want players to be able to profit off some of their stuff, but I think now college players, it's almost becoming a professional sport.
Yeah.
Meaning that players are deciding to go to school solely and based on how much money a college would pay them.
Mm,
And it wasn't like that back in the day. You looked at the culture, you looked at the coach, you looked at
right.
the schedule, you looked at the team, you looked at your fit, and those are reasons why you would go to a school or not. Now it's strictly almost on, well, how much are you gonna pay me?
Yeah.
I kind of have issue with that, but I am glad that these college players are able to market and get compensation off of their play.
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely interesting. Here's one question here from Noodles. I love the name. It says, this is a good question. What was one fear you had to overcome to make you a better person? Wow.
Yeah, I mean everyone has fear, but I think the biggest fear for most people is the fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
People just don't want to fail, and in basketball, failure is very much a part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this one Michael Jordan commercial I used to love so much, and he talked about how many game-winning shots
Mm.
he missed.
Yeah.
We all talk about and see the ones that he made.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, he made the last second shot. Oh my God. But he talked about how many game-winning shots and plays that he missed or failed on. And
Mm-hmm.
that's precisely the reason why he succeeds.
That's it.
And I love that. And I think failure is a part of each and everything that we do. But I think how we deal with failure is even more important. And so if we can kind of grapple that and understand that, I think it would make us all better.
That's it. Yeah, I was looking for one of the things here. I think we talked about yeah, in the book you talk about celebrating process, not just the outcome. I think that's what we talked about. So you just got to continue to put that work in. Like I say, it's a part of, life. Failure is a part of life. It's how you pick yourself up. That's one thing. If you're afraid to try, you're never going to succeed. So I think that's what I took from the book as well.
Yeah, I got a plaque that sits on my desk, and it says, you miss 100% of the shots you never take.
Oh
And
man, that's good.
I just love that. I
That
just
is
love that.
good.
If you were a shooter and score, like I was, well, not so much a shooter. I was a pretty good mid-range shooter, but definitely a scorer. If you never take the shot, you can never get a bucket.
That's right.
And if you never put yourself in a position to take the opportunity, you'll never make it. And so, I love that, and I try to live by that each and every day.
All right, man, that's really good. Well, I got my final questions. Anybody else before I ask the final question? I'm going to give them 1 minute here. I remember when you said that, take the shot. I'll just real quickly. Me and my son was coaching basketball, and my son he's a big guy, but he can shoot threes. Man, I'm telling you, he'll nail them. But he was just so slow getting up the court. My son said, take him out. And then we took him out. Nobody's scoring. I put him in because he's at least going to shoot it. He may not make it, but at least he's going to get the shot off. Right. And then I tell him, hey, you at least got to have a chance. You got to shoot the ball.
Well, in basketball, you got to be a threat.
Yes.
I tell kids all the time, the easiest way to get subbed out is to catch the basketball and never look at the basket.
Exactly.
On your catch, you should always be a threat to score. When Steph Curry catches the basketball, there's a fear. Every player on that court, there's a fear.
Mm-hmm.
Because, they know on his catch, he is looking to score.
That's right.
His three-point shots are daggers and game-changing, and everybody knows it. But that would never happen if he never took a look at the basket.
That's right, man. And I tell you, my son, he'll shoot it. He won't probably make it, but he'll shoot it. So that actually, this is the last question I'm going to ask you before my closeout. This is actually a good lead-in to what you just said. And, I'm pretty sure you get this a million times here. It says, what's your favorite all-time NBA player and team?
Oh, that's easy. I mean, again, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, so I'm a huge Laker fan.
Mm-hmm.
And Magic Johnson is my favorite player of all time. Kobe would be a close second, and then Michael Jordan comes in third. But, I grew up in the 1980s, and I watched the Showtime Lakers. I never missed a game. And when I tell you that was some incredible basketball, those were magical moments. I mean, his name is fitting because he was just that. And Magic Johnson easily was my hero and one of my favorite basketball players of if not my favorite basketball player of all time.
All right. And then I guess that would be the Lakers. You said the team. You said that
no
would
question. No question.
No question. There you go. All right. Well, here's my final question. It's normally like a wrap-up question. It says, when it's all said and done, what do you hope people take away from Celebrate Your Wins, not just as a book, but as a philosophy?
That's a good question. Everybody's situation is different. Obviously, my lens is basketball. That's where I'm coming from. That's what I did. That's what I know. But like we talked about earlier, a lot of those skills, a lot of those things that I had to do and endure, a lot of the things that I did are translatable to business and life. And so you have to take, the book and seize your moment and find out how it can apply to you. One of the things I talk about in the book, and you'll remember that, is, mental health. My my grandmother committed suicide, solely due to mental health. And so there are people, and I've got messages, from people who had loved ones that they know who went through the same thing. Mm-hmm. And, that was their relatability moment. There are other people who took the pillars and saw, some of those same things that they had to go through in corporate America. that was their relatable moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever your relatable moment is, celebrate your wins, can fill some of those gaps on some of those things that you may need. And really, that's what my plan and what my main objective was for the book.
All right. Well, I'm glad, I hate to say we had this little break where you had to write it, be forced to write it, but I'm glad you did write it. It brought out so many things. I'm super excited. Like I say, I'm going to go get the audio book, guys. I'm telling you right now, Amazon have it. And guys, you can order it for, they give you 3 months for 99 cents a month. So that's $3. And then you can cancel it before the regular things kick in, get all the audio books you want. But man, this has been a great interview. We will be replaying this throughout the week here, so hopefully you'll get some more sales from it. But any final words you want to say?
No, I really enjoyed this. I love the concept. I thought, you asked some really good questions. I thought the listeners who are listening asked some good questions. This was really an enjoyable experience for me. I'm looking forward to hopefully maybe doing this again sometime.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna let you have it. And I think you said you were going to a game tonight.
Yes, Duke Louisville, big time
right.
ACC matchup, and hopefully the weather holds up where I can get there. But I'm looking forward to seeing my boys play.
All right. Well, you have a blessed one here, and we'll let you go, guys. So remember, we always say before we leave, remember to love God and love one another.
Simply the best, better than all the rest. Computer Pal.